Good evening, stargazers. Welcome to our cozy story time. Tonight we have a special tale to share, perfect for drifting off into a dreamy sleep. It's called Goodnight Ocean. So snuggle up, close your eyes, and let's journey together through this enchanting night sky. Are you ready? Let's begin. Good night to the ocean. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, little Sophie stood on the sandy beach, her toes wiggling in the cool, damp sand. The salty breeze tousled her curly brown hair as she gazed out at the vast expanse of the ocean before her. Sophie loved the beach, and she especially loved watching the day come to an end, as the ocean prepared for its nightly slumber. "Mommy," Sophie said, tugging on her mother's sleeve, "does the ocean go to sleep like we do?" Her mother smiled down at her, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Well, Sophie, the ocean doesn't sleep exactly like we do, but it does have its own special way of saying goodnight. Would you like to hear about it?" Sophie nodded eagerly, her eyes wide with wonder. "All right then," her mother said, sitting down on the sand and patting the spot next to her. "Let's watch the ocean say goodnight together." As Sophie snuggled up next to her mother, the last rays of sunlight danced across the water's surface, creating a shimmering path of gold that stretched as far as the eye could see. "You see, Sophie," her mother began, "as the day comes to an end, the ocean starts to whisper its good nights to all the creatures that call it home. It starts with the tiniest beings first." Sophie leaned forward, straining her ears to hear the ocean's whispers. Down in the deepest parts of the ocean, where the water is dark and cool, tiny glowing plankton begin to shine like stars in the night sky. They twinkle and sparkle, creating a magical light show that signals the end of the day to all the fish swimming by. Sophie's imagination soared as she pictured the underwater light show. She could almost see the tiny plankton twinkling like fairy lights beneath the waves. "Next," her mother continued, "the ocean says goodnight to all the colorful fish that dart among the coral reefs. The parrotfish, with their rainbow scales, find cozy nooks in the coral to rest. They wrap themselves in a special blanket made of mucus to keep safe while they sleep." "You," Sophie giggled, wrinkling her nose. "A mucus blanket?" Her mother laughed. "It might sound yucky to us, but for the parrotfish, it's the perfect way to stay safe and cozy all night long." As the sky darkened, turning a deep indigo, Sophie noticed the first stars beginning to appear. She pointed excitedly at a bright one just above the horizon. "Look, Mommy, is that a star saying goodnight to the ocean too?" "It could be," her mother replied with a smile. "The ocean and the sky are great friends, you know. They work together to make the world beautiful." Sophie nodded solemnly, taking in this new piece of information. "And now," her mother went on, "as the night grows deeper, the ocean says goodnight to the bigger sea creatures. The dolphins, who've spent the day playing and jumping in the waves, gather in small groups. They take turns sleeping, with some staying awake to watch for any danger." "Do they have sleepovers?" Sophie asked, thinking of her own fun sleepovers with friends. "In a way, yes," her mother chuckled. "They stay close to their pod, their family, keeping each other safe through the night." A cool breeze swept across the beach, and Sophie snuggled closer to her mother, who wrapped an arm around her. "The sea turtles," her mother continued, her voice soft and soothing, "find quiet spots on the ocean floor to rest. Some wedge themselves under rocks or coral ledges, while others simply float near the surface, rising occasionally to take a breath of air." Sophie yawned, feeling as sleepy as the sea turtles her mother described. But she fought to keep her eyes open, not wanting to miss a moment of the ocean's bedtime routine. "What about the sharks, Mommy?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and a touch of fear. The sharks," her mother said, giving Sophie a reassuring squeeze. Many sharks don't sleep like we do. Instead, they have rest periods. Some species, like the great white shark, might swim slowly in place, letting the water flow over their gills so they can breathe while they rest. Sophie tried to imagine a shark swimming in its sleep and giggled at the thought. But not all sea creatures say goodnight when the sun sets, her mother added mysteriously. Sophie's eyes widened. They don't? No. Some sea animals are nocturnal, which means they're most active at night. When the ocean says good night to the day creatures, it's also saying good morning to its nighttime friends. Like who? Sophie asked, her curiosity piqued. Well, there's the lanternfish, for example. These small, deep-sea fish have special light-producing organs on their bodies. When night falls, they swim up from the deep, dark waters towards the surface, creating a spectacular light show in the ocean. Sophie gasped in delight, imagining thousands of tiny, glowing fish lighting up the dark waters. And then there are the giant squid, her mother continued, lowering her voice dramatically. These mysterious creatures of the deep wake up as darkness falls, using their long tentacles to catch prey in the murky depths. A shiver of excitement ran down Sophie's spine at the thought of these elusive sea monsters. Don't forget the sea urchins, her mother added with a smile. These spiny little creatures become more active at night, slowly crawling across the ocean floor in search of algae to munch on. As Sophie listened to her mother's soothing voice, she felt her eyelids growing heavy. The gentle sound of the waves lapping at the shore created a peaceful lullaby, and the twinkling stars above seemed to wink at her knowingly. The ocean has its own special nightlife, her mother said softly. While some creatures rest, others come alive, creating a beautiful balance in the underwater world. Sophie nodded sleepily, her imagination filled with images of glowing fish, mysterious squid, and busy sea urchins. But what about the biggest animal in the ocean, Mommy? She asked through a yawn. How does the ocean say goodnight to the whale? Her mother smiled, clearly impressed by Sophie's question. The whales. They have a very special way of saying goodnight. You see, whales don't sleep quite like we do. They can't fully go to sleep, because they need to come up to the surface to breathe air. Sophie's eyes widened with surprise. They don't sleep? Ever? Well, not exactly, her mother explained. Instead, whales have a unique way of resting. They let one half of their brain sleep at a time, while the other half stays awake to control their breathing and watch for any danger. Wow, Sophie whispered, amazed by this fact. That's so cool. It is, isn't it? Her mother agreed. And some whales, like the humpback whales, have their own special lullabies. They sing haunting, beautiful songs that can travel for miles through the water. These songs change as the day turns to night, becoming slower and more peaceful. Sophie closed her eyes, trying to imagine the sound of a whale's lullaby echoing through the vast ocean. In her mind, she could almost hear the deep, melodious tones carried by the waves. As the night grew deeper, Sophie and her mother sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rhythmic sound of the waves. The moon had risen now, casting a silvery glow across the water's surface. It looked like a giant pearl nestled in a bed of velvet sky. Mommy, Sophie said after a while, her voice thick with sleepiness. I think I can hear the ocean saying goodnight. Her mother smiled and pulled her close. What does it sound like, sweetheart? Sophie was quiet for a moment, concentrating hard. It sounds like a big, gentle hug, like when you tuck me in at night and give me a kiss on the forehead. It's soft and warm and makes everything feel safe. Her mother's eyes glistened with emotion. That's beautiful, Sophie. I think you've understood the ocean's goodnight perfectly. As they sat there, embraced by the night and the soothing presence of the sea, Sophie's mother began to hum softly. It was a tune that seemed to blend seamlessly with the sound of the waves, creating a perfect lullaby. Sophie's eyelids grew heavier, and she leaned against her mother, feeling safe and content. As she drifted off to sleep, she imagined all the sea creatures settling down for the night. The parrotfish in their mucus blankets, the dolphins huddled together, the sea turtles tucked under coral ledges, and the whales singing their gentle songs. In her dreams, Sophie swam with the glowing lanternfish, danced with playful dolphins, and floated alongside majestic whales. She explored vibrant coral reefs and mysterious deep-sea caverns. The ocean cradled her in its cool embrace, whispering secrets of hidden treasures and ancient mysteries. As the night wore on, the tide began to change. The waves that had been gently lapping at the shore now retreated, as if the ocean itself was tucking in for the night. The exposed sand glistened under the moonlight, dotted with seashells and smooth pebbles, little gifts left behind by the sea. High above, the stars continued their silent vigil, their light reflecting off the calm surface of the water. Occasionally, a shooting star would streak across the sky, as if the heavens too were settling down for sleep, pulling a glittering blanket across their vast expanse. On the beach, Sophie slept peacefully in her mother's arms, her dreams filled with the wonders of the ocean. Her mother gazed out at the moonlit sea, marveling at its ability to inspire such wonder and imagination in her little girl. As the first light of dawn began to tinge the eastern sky, Sophie stirred in her sleep. Her mother looked down at her, smiling at the peaceful expression on her face. "Sophie," she whispered gently, "it's time to wake up. The ocean is saying good morning." Sophie's eyes fluttered open, and she looked around in momentary confusion before remembering where she was. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and then gasped in delight at the sight before her. The sun was just peeking over the horizon, painting the sky and sea in brilliant shades of pink, orange, and gold. The ocean, which had been calm and quiet through the night, now seemed to come alive with the new day. Waves crashed against the shore with renewed energy, and seabirds wheeled overhead, their cries echoing across the beach. "Look, Mommy," Sophie exclaimed, pointing at the water. "The ocean's waking up." Her mother nodded, smiling. "That's right, sweetheart. Just like us, the ocean has its own way of greeting the new day." As they watched, the golden light of the rising sun spread across the water, chasing away the last shadows of night. In the shallows, small fish darted about, their scales glinting in the early morning light. Further out, Sophie thought she saw the fin of a dolphin breaking the surface, as if it was stretching after a good night's rest. "Mommy," Sophie said, her voice filled with awe, "can we say good morning to the ocean?" Her mother smiled and nodded. "Of course we can. Why don't you go ahead?" Sophie stood up, brushed the sand from her clothes, and took a deep breath. Then, with all the enthusiasm of a child filled with wonder, she called out, "Good morning, ocean. Thank you for letting me see you say goodnight. I hope you slept well." As if in response, a gentle wave rolled up the beach, touching Sophie's toes before retreating. She giggled, imagining that the ocean was giving her a morning kiss. Her mother stood up and took her hand. "Come on, Sophie, let's go home and have some breakfast. We can come back another day to see the ocean say goodnight again." As they walked away from the beach, Sophie turned back for one last look at the vast, shimmering expanse of water. The ocean seemed to sparkle in the morning light, full of promise for the new day ahead. Sophie smiled, feeling like she now shared a special secret with the sea, the knowledge of how it said goodnight and good morning to all its wonderful creatures. From that day on, whenever Sophie visited the beach, she always made sure to wish the ocean a good night or a good morning. And as she grew older, She never forgot the magic of that night when she learned about the ocean's bedtime routine. It instilled in her a lifelong love and respect for the sea and all its inhabitants, a gift as precious and enduring as the ocean itself. And so, as we end our tale, we too bid good night to the ocean, to its gentle waves and mysterious depths, to its colorful creatures and hidden wonders. May it cradle us in our dreams and greet us with joy in the morning, forever a source of magic and inspiration in our lives. Good night, ocean. Until we meet again.